From climbing to running, we now have Hamdan from Aachen, who's going to tell us about Run&Tap, investigation of on-body tapping for runners.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Hamdan, and I am from RWTH Aachen University in Germany. I'm here on behalf of my colleagues, Ravi, Kosuru, Corsten, and my advisor, Borchers. Okay, so let's start by running. So running is one of the most practiced sports worldwide. And maybe you all started your day by running. Well, I didn't, but some people have. And people are running for different reasons, either for social reasons or for health reasons. But whatever reason they choose to run for, they mostly carry some kind of mobile device with them. They strap it on their arm, on their wrist, or they clip it on their clothes. And the reasons are obvious. They want to listen to music, motivational messages. They want to query some fitness data, such as their heart rate or their running speed. And some people use it for navigation if they're going new routes. Well, I do not need to motivate this research beyond telling you that interacting with mobile devices is already very hard while walking. It is even more challenging if you're running. So these are just examples of how users will have to kind of change their posture and disturb their rhythm and their running balance to interact with their devices eyes-free. Okay, so just to support my motivation a bit more, I did look at mobile interaction research literature, and there is the details are in the paper. But one interesting paper by Bergstrom is that they found that even people while walking, if they're asked to interact with their smartphones, which are flat displays, they will reduce their walking speed to 25% their preferred walking speed. And if they ask them to even walk a bit faster, this percentage becomes even more dramatic. We also created a focus group and conducted an online survey based on the focus group results. We found that most of our responders even have other concerns, such as interacting while sweating, because if you're running for a while, your hands become damp. It's very hard to actually get the phone to respond to you. Nevertheless, it becomes slippery and it could fall from your hand. They also highlighted mode buttons as very hard to keep track how many times you tapped while running, because you're keeping your rhythm in your head as well as you're trying to get to the right status you want. And they also raised safety concerns. So one of the quotes we got is, "I hit a lamppost and broke my nose while changing my music track, unfortunately. Not to mention also the phone screen cracked after falling off my hand. I stopped using my device during running after this incident." And literature shows that if we can reduce interaction time to 4 seconds or less, Ashbrook called this micro-interaction, we can then allow users to continue with their main activity, their physical activity, if it was running, walking, or biking, etc., and allow them to go back to the main, to switch between the main task and mobile interaction very quickly. Okay, so now we have some kind of our design guidelines for the next best user interface for runners. We need it to be quick, so it supports micro interactions. Preferably, it would be eyes-free and device-free, so you don't have to carry more things in your hands or move your attention from the street. And this motivated us to use the human body as a potential device. So the human body has been investigated as an input device before because it is always available, so it supports hands-free interaction. It is large compared to your smart watch, for example. We have proprioceptive sense, which allows us to be aware of our limbs in 3D space and allows us to touch and reach different body locations eyes-free. Kinesthetic cues help our spatial memory. So imagine that you connect, for example, your best friend with your right shoulder and your second best friend with your left shoulder. You will kind of remember this association. And finally, most body areas are quick to reach, and this research was done by Wagner et al. They found that users can reach down to the calf of their leg or up to their shoulders within 4 seconds. So research on on-body interaction can be divided roughly into 3 categories: applications and techniques, and these have focused mostly on interacting with large displays, as well as multi-surface interaction and mobile interaction, where the mobile device is a proxy, and you can hover it over your body to retrieve different information or access menu items. The second category is technology-based, and there's a lot of technology that can track on-body interaction. I just focused mostly on the more wearable techniques. So there's on-skin interaction, on-skin detection, whether it's using acoustic signals, range sensors, or skin-based sensors as well. And there's also conductive fabric, which can sense pressure, gestures, and simple tapping using conductive thread. Finally, there is a group of researchers who focus on the human factors when interacting on the body. Lin et al., for example, found that people can distinguish 6 different points on their forearm, but these points are different for different users, so where they are and how large the points are. Gustafsson found that the simple phalanges that we have on our palm support ice-free interaction superiorly compared to a flat smartphone when we cannot look at the phone. Wang et al. Described how the anatomy of our hand can prevent us from reaching different points for thumb to finger interaction, and how it can improve menu selection if we can lay out these locations in the right positions. And finally, Vo et al. Showed that our self-image affects how we make gestures on our body, how we tap, where we think up is and down is when we're thinking about gestures, and how we do other more complex gestures. And they mostly focus on abdomen interaction. So these works have motivated our research questions. So the first one is, how do runners perceive on-body interaction? Is it even possible for them to perform this kind of interaction while running? How accurately can they tap different body locations? And is there an effect for speed of running speed and fatigue? If they become more tired, would they become less performant on different locations? And finally, what is the layout of this body kind of interface? So this is our experiment setup. We have 7 Vicon cameras tracking the user while running on a treadmill. The iPad was positioned on the treadmill control panel to provide visual instructions. And finally, a GoPro was there just to capture what's happening. The users were provided shirts from small to large. These shirts were long sleeves, so we could position our passive infrared reflectors on them. And these were positioned for each users individually. So we did not pre-position them or use a suit, and this helped us to position them based on the user size. The user then stood on the treadmill and followed the instructions, just as a looping video showing how they were tracked. Okay, so before the main study, we had a pilot study just to identify the right locations that we should start off with. Off the bat, we excluded locations on the chest because Kara et al. And Profita et al. Found them socially unacceptable for on-body interaction. We found 25 locations just by consulting within the design team in our chair, and these were reduced to 16 locations after the pilot was conducted based on user feedback. We also did not ask users to do a specific gesture, so we just asked them to tap, to hit locations. We did not use tapping at this point in order to see how they would do that. So would they carry metaphors from other devices or so? And most of them use palm interaction or forefinger tapping. Their justification is that they felt more secure tapping with the full hand and that they were hitting the right location. Finally, regarding tapping speed, while the runners did start tapping quickly, they did dwell when they were doing the experiment. They would put their hand and make it fixed a little bit just to confirm that they were tapping the right place. And just to fix this problem, we asked them to release quickly in the main study. So the main experiment eventually had 16 locations on the upper body, 2 running speeds, and 6 blocks, and the running speeds were optimized per individual within a specific range. 12 participants, 8 male, 11 right-handed. I will talk about this limitation. And ages were between 20 and 50 years old. The duration of the experiment, including the interview, was 60 minutes. Data collection, we had user perception data, we had tapping accuracy information, as well as where is the location and size of each location on the body. We used Chen et al.'s framework for analyzing on-body interaction. We first projected all this data from the Viken system to the body. We then normalized it based on on each user's arm length and surface of their abdomen, and we removed around 5.6 data points, which were beyond the two standard deviations from each centroid. Okay, so the results. Physical comfort was higher on the abdomen compared to the arms. Well, it is passive and it's closer to the arms when running. You can all do the gestures if you feel like you want to test my results. But this is how the results look from our users. And the wrist was also perceived as easily reachable, as well as upper arm. Other points were perceived less comfortable to use, specifically the joint, points around the joint, and this is kind of logical, because if you're swinging your arm, sometimes the joint is very far away, so reaching it becomes more harder, and for obvious reasons, people found shoulder positions a bit more tiring. We asked them how confident were they when tapping different locations on their body. And they were more confident tapping the shoulder because it's one location for a big area, so they were more sure of that area. The wrist joint was obvious for them. They also chose 2 points, the 2 furthest points of the 6 points on the abdomen, and all other locations were rated as less obvious for them when they're running. However, we talk more about these locations in the paper because there's some interesting findings as well. Other responses include cognitive demand, 2.6 on a 5-point Likert scale, where 5 is very demanding, and the likelihood of using our system was 4.6. Before moving on to quantitative data, we asked them one more question. We gave them 10 actions from a media app and a fitness app. Play and pause your music, move forward and backward, etc., and heart rate, speed, distance, elapsed time. How would you map these to your body? And you could already start imagining how people would map these, but to cut it short, we found no uniform mapping for these actions, very individualized. Some people said, this is my media player on the right, and this is my fitness player on the left. Some people divided up and down, and others chose the abdomen for one app and the arms for another. However, one interesting trend is that users at mostly mapped 3 different functions or actions per arm and on the abdomen. So they spread them away very further away. Even they did map locations on the shoulders while it was their least favorite. Heart rate and play pause buttons were trending on the abdomen area because for them it was more accessible and these were more frequently used. For the accuracy rate, the bad news is fatigue and speed. As a researcher, the bad news was fatigue and speed did not have a significant effect, so I couldn't comment anything about those. But location had a significant effect, and I looked at it closer. So this is the effect of the arms. We had a mean accuracy rate of 98% compared to 35% for the abdomen, and the least performing locations were the ones in the center of the abdomen. Very obvious, again, or very logical, because they were sandwiched between 2 other points on the right and the left. This is how the layout of the points were, the locations on the arms. I will focus on the left arm. The green graph here shows a box plot that represents one location. The center is the centroid of that location. The thicker box is 1 SD from the centroid, and the narrower box is 2 SD from the centroid. We calculated the size of the location by multiplying 1 SD by 4 based on Lin et al. And Fitz's law. Okay, so let's look a bit closer how these are different. Each row represents one participant. We found that hitting the upper arm location was more uniform among users, so the centroid was almost in the same location, normalized. While on the shoulders, they distributed their interaction more freely, again, a larger space with one location, so they had the freedom. The key question in our experiment was, is there a uniform layout? And gladly, there was. This is the uniform layout for one arm, for example. It captures 96% of the data. However, it is not perfect. You can see that there's an overlap on the forearm between two locations. We do get a 90% overall accuracy from this layout, which is very encouraging. We also provide designers that could use this information, normalized distance information, so where these locations should be normalized regardless of the user size, as well as the average size of each location. So this mess was how people interacted on their abdomen. That was a bit complex to investigate and to analyze. I would remind you that the accuracy rate was 0.35 on the abdomen. So what we did is that we used the same data we have collected and said, what if we had reduced the locations from 6 to less? And this is just how this would give us a better accuracy rate. And we optimally decided that 2 locations would give us 96 accuracy rate if they are 15 centimeters distant from each other. So these are our design implications. We discussed them more in the paper. I will skip over that. And what we imagine in the future is some amazing designer or ourselves will take this information and design the next interactive training t-shirt. We think this is very applicable for industry right now. They're already doing that for passive technology where they're measuring your heart rate, so why not controlling and listening back to your heart rate via speakers. Okay, so our main conclusion is this uniform interface layout that we're suggesting it's possible. But there's a lot of work to be done. Basically, we need to actually build a technical interface, so we test the social aspects of this interaction technique, and we would like to go back and investigate this mapping idea. How would people map different actions to their body? Would they actually want them to be customized, or can they be predefined? So thank you for listening, and I am happy to receive your questions.
We've got time for one, 2 questions. Okay, down the back, please, Daniel. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Nick Kazakis from the University of Hamburg. This is very interesting work. I'm curious, how did you, maybe I missed it from your talk, how did you actually detect the tap? So you had the markers on the body, but how do you know when there's an intersection or where there's not an intersection?
Yes, I am assuming you worked with such a system to ask me this question because it is very hard. So we had 2 choices. We either use a conductive thread, which was available for us. However, the hardware that was attached to it hindered the users from running naturally. So eventually we did go the maths way. We did find the shortest distance between the tapping point and each body location. And this kind of gave us a hint. We also went back to the videos and humanly annotated them.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any more questions? I got a quick one. So where would you take this now as you've been on the treadmill? What other sports could you apply this to, you think? I would not stretch it for so many sports. If you go to the gym, there's a lot of sports that use the hands already as part of
activity. I would imagine that it would work for speed walking, which is very similar to running. I would be interested to see if other sport activities will use it, but maybe in their pause time, so not during actual interaction. It will at least relieve them from having to carry an additional device.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Let's thank Noor for